Hello and welcome to What is Magic, a series of videos that I've created having a discussion with some of the most interesting and some of the most creative minds in magic currently about what magic is. We talk a little bit more philosophically about magic, what magic means to our audiences, what magic means to us, and how we can be the best magicians possible for our audiences. In this episode, I'd speak to John Mason, a super hobbyist and a person who has so much knowledge in magic. I've known John for a couple of years now and he's become a great friend of mine, and I really value his opinion when I'm talking about magic and when we're discussing new ideas and shows and new products and things like this. So without further ado, here is my chat with super hobbyist Mr. John Mason. John, good morning and thank you for joining me for this chat today.
Good morning, Scott. I'm honoured to be here.
I'm honoured to have you here. And with the pleasantries out of the way, I would like to dive straight in with a very simple question of, in your own words, what is magic?
Well, magic to me is it's a lovely form of entertainment. I think there's wonderment if done well. I think it's absorbing. I think it's very from the magician's point or my point of view, I think it's very addictive. I think we can all agree on that. I just think it's a lovely way to communicate with people and give them something enjoyable and something that they find amazing. That's basically what my feeling is about magic.
I love that you included communication, because that is something that I think we're going to talk a little bit more, but a little bit later. So you've spoken about how magic can be wonderment when it's performed really well, and for the most part, it's a form of entertainment that communicates messages to people that are filled with wonder and magic. But if you were to describe magic in general, is that what you would still say?
Well, it's such a nebulous thing, I mean, it's a suspension of disbelief. So basically, yes. I mean, I always say to people, I think, magic is you can compare magic with a good joke. There's a beginning, you're lining the joke up, you're getting to the middle, and finally you have the punchline. And it should just be purely the entertainment for the spectator, not to make yourself look fantastic or, cliches like "Would you be impressed if I could?" and things like that. It should not be, as far as I'm concerned, it should be nothing to do with me. It should just be telling a good joke for the spectator who's listening, or for the spectator who is, enjoying what I'm trying to do in magic for him or her.
This is excellent. And I'm going to explain why I purged a little bit deeper into that question in a second. But first, I want to touch on the fact that you said it's magic. Good magic is like a joke or a good comedy, where it has a beginning and a middle and the end, and you deliver all of the parts of it to produce a full experience. Because this is what I always explain to people, that a great magic trick is similar to a great story or a joke, as you put it, where it has the beginning to get people in. There's something that attracts people into the trick. And then you have the middle, which, as we know in terms of magic, is called the turn, where something becomes interesting or changes or something like this. And then we lead into the finale, which usually is the most magical or best part, most impressive part of the trick. And that wraps everything up neatly with a bow so that the person has had a full experience, much like the experience of a book or a movie or even a poem
Exactly.
or a joke. Circling back to why I urged a little bit deeper into your thoughts of magic, the reason I ask is because you've spoken about magic exclusively in terms of magicians, but are there other forms of magic?
That's a very difficult. That's a kind of philosophical question that I think we'll go off on tangents here and really never get anywhere. So we're going down a tributary here, and I don't know where it would end. I mean, theatre is magic. I mean, if you like. I mean, again, and of course, in some shows there actually are effects that people have done to make the musicals and things happen. But that to me is magic. I think ballet to me is it's amazing what ballet dancers can do. It's almost beyond human. But it's it's diluting the word really. I mean, it's all magical, of course. I mean, I think,
Mhm.
um, but basically talking about magic as we know it from a magician's point of view, I think it's a different thing altogether. I mean, they talk about the art of magic, which it is sort of, but I think it's more a craft that you make it
Mm.
artistic because theoretically anybody could learn an act and do it within, let's say, 3 months. You can't do it as a singer. You couldn't do it as a musician, and you certainly couldn't do it as an actor. So I think, in a way, it's it's in my view. I can't really. I've never really accepted magic as an art form. I know that
Mm.
kind of upset a lot of people because it elevates it to a level I do. It is as I say, it's artistic, but it's a craft that you learn, and how you perform it. Of course, that's the whole thing. Is how you perform the trick. The trick is a means to entertain. The trick itself is irrelevant. I
I
mean, not
find
irrelevant.
this fascinating.
Mhm.
The fact that your description of magic, but also the fact that you see magic as when we talk about explorative ideas of what could be magic and what might be magic, and the fact that you say what you see ballerinas do could be deemed as magical, but it's not intrinsically magic. It has a magical,
Yes.
amazing feeling to you because to you it's something impossible, but that doesn't make it magic as such, not
Yes.
as we know it.
No, no, indeed. Yeah, but and the work put into that particular field, I mean, or is, it's doesn't compare with what we have to practice as magic. I mean, this is it's a different ball game. But that's what I do find incredibly magical. All theatre to me is
Mm.
amazing. You go there and they really convince you what's happening. Whatever would be a play, whatever it is, I find that incredible. I mean, of course, there's nothing worse than a bad magic trick, and nothing worse than a bad play or
Yeah,
bad dancers. I mean, it has to be at the top of the game, and then it is a great experience.
I think people, or I hope anyway, that people will find that really interesting. Your perspective of what magic is and what can be magic, and the difference, or at least your ideas on how to differentiate art from craft from magic, and how
Yes.
they all sit into the world as you see it. With that in mind, I would like to ask you, do you remember your first, because now people have an idea of what magic means to you. Do you remember the first memory that you have of magic, of experiencing magic?
My first experience, I don't know. One's always given magic sets when you're younger. It's just, I was thinking probably one of my most things I like most was when David Berglas had his TV show. Um, and I found that extraordinary. It was just impossible. I can't remember what particular thing he did, but I think everything he did. Also, Chan Canasta, yeah, in the old black and white days, he was a fantastic performer, and he really. There was no way in a million years I could work out how he did anything, and it was, and his, everything was an experiment, as it was with David Berglas, and those were outstanding magical performances for me.
And you think that looking back now, they would have been your first experiences of magic, and seeing someone perform at the level where it has that feeling of wonderment.
Yes, absolutely. I think we had a magician for birthday parties, when I was sort of 12. And
Yeah.
I suppose I have no memory of them. I just know we did. But it wasn't great wonderment, and
Mm.
children's magicians then were basically just doing their job, and, we watched it. But no, but when I saw, I didn't see much live magic, but the
Ah,
magic
okay.
that stood out for me was, as I mentioned, Jan Canasta and David Berglas and latterly, of course, Paul Daniels.
This might be really interesting for people as well, because, of course, you're talking about magicians who many younger people may not even have ever heard of at this point.
Yes,
And certainly, if people are watching this chat with us 1 year, 2 years, 5 years from now, then it's the further we get away from the prime of people like Chan Canasta and David Berglas and David Nixon and Paul Daniels and these kinds of people,
yes,
the less likely it is that young people getting into magic would have experienced what they had to offer. So I think that with these being your first memories, and you being of a generation of what I would call the kind of first generation of modern magicians, people who revolutionized the idea of magic the first magicians on television, the magicians that everyone would talk about and would be on the front of the newspaper, and then it was a household name, which doesn't really happen anymore.
No.
So I think in comparison with that, what do you think about magic now in the current day that we live in, 2024? Is
Well,
it
I think
better
it's
now or is it worse? Is it
well, I think it's like everything today. There's so much social media magic, which is instant and no depth to it. I mean, it is amazing what they do for 30 seconds and get loads of followers. But to me, it's very superficial, and it's just like having a very light snack instead of having a full meal with 3 courses, because I find it very superficial and rather boring. And I think the actual performers, it's really an ego trip for them, because I don't think, there's no modesty. It really is, look how clever I am. I'm fooling you very badly. Okay, they are entertaining, but I think it's fooling badly about 80%, and the entertainment value is about 20%, because it's a wow factor they're just trying to create without any real depth. It's a flash in the pan.
I very much agree with you. We've spoken about this before this chat today about how we feel about social media magic and
Yes.
how it's perhaps not the healthiest way to present magic to the public. But we know that people's attention is shrinking, and
Yes.
the amount of opportunity, we're all leading busier and busier lives. So if
Yes.
someone were to, if a magician were to create a social media account where instead of a 10-second trick or a longer magic trick that's been reduced down to a very small time frame, but it had some elegance and it had some style and it was shot really well, really beautifully, almost like each video was 2 minutes long. It was on Instagram, it was on TikTok, whatever social
Yes.
media there is. Would you be more inclined to watch that? Would you still sit down? Would you prefer to watch that than magic tricks that are reduced down to basically the punchline?
I would prefer that, definitely. But whether the kids would watch for 2 minutes, I don't think so. I really don't think so. And there's so much archive on YouTube and things that you can see the greats and enjoy how good they were. And there's some unbelievable things some gems that you can watch. Don Allen, who did a cups and balls, or actually a chop cup routine. Actually, I have it on my computer because the patter is just fantastic. And one of the problems with Don Allen is that all magicians stole his patter because it was so good. And you don't get those people today. I mean, I suppose David Williams was that kind of magician, and he was patter, and you can't say a word against David Williams. I suppose in his latter years, he kind of became a bit over the top because he couldn't go anymore, so it became zanier and zanier. And I think that it kind of reduced his entertainment a little bit, but he was just, and a very nice man. I thought he's sort of one of my heroes, I guess, but he's everybody's hero. You can't knock David Williams.
There's a
Sorry.
reason why the book is called Williamson's Wonders,
Exactly.
because he was a wonder himself as a
Yes,
performer.
yes, he was.
With your thoughts on how social media magic is almost taking over the younger generation, we also have at the same time right now, or at least over the last 6 months, or the majority of 2024, I've seen the rise of more magic shows, as in live magic shows. And I know that you've
Yes,
bought tickets to some of these shows as well.
yes, I have. And I usually
So,
take a layman with me.
I did not know that.
Yes, because it's so nice to go with to get their reactions. Because basically,
So it's more enjoyable for you to experience it that way.
yes, well, I mean, I've got a lot of friends that love magic, and so I will go, and it's amusing to see their take on it.
Hmm.
I think you and I will watch it from more. I'm not a professional, but from a different eye to see how well they do it and how long it takes to get to the point. And I've seen some embarrassingly bad performances. I won't mention the names of the performers,
Hmm.
and some really, really, really very good people. And the trouble is with most people, if they see live magic, and most people see it maybe at weddings or bar mitzvahs or things like that, and 95% of the people go back feeling so happy
Mm.
because no one sees a magician performing 10 feet away. TV magic, even the best show, even all the Copperfields and the Paul Allen and Paul Daniels, it's great, but there's always an element, could it be a camera trick? But when you see it, when the guy's standing there or the girl's standing there doing it for an hour, it's hard, and and they don't make mistakes, and everybody knows the magician's walking on a metaphorical tightrope, and that's what makes magic kind of so. There's an element in the audience always not really hoping he's going to fall off or it's going to go wrong, and if that's also another element of the. It's kind of like an exciting thing is, where's this going and can it go wrong? And some of the card magic that top magicians do, it's so impossible. And you see them and you wonder, is that finger flick going to work today? And it does. And you see, but often you see the relief when they've got the applause, which has been very good. But there's also a kind of a terrific sigh that comes across their face, which I don't think, it's very hard not to do it. But it's just there's an element of smirk when there's a very, very, because with laymen, they think every card trick basically is sleight of hand, even if it's a self-working miracle. And so it's quite amusing how they really have they shouldn't have an idea, and why would they? But you do a really clever out of this world as an example of the most perfect self-working trick ever invented, I would guess. Whereas if you'll do a trick with multiple shifts and all that stuff, and for the layman, it doesn't look any different.
It's funny you mention that, because I was hired for a set of 21-year-old twins, as in 21-year-olds, not 21-year-olds.
Yes, I understand that. Yes, I got that.
They were all, I would say, very well educated. All of these, so they were, I would assume, 19 to 23, something like that. And then there were some parents there as well. But I didn't see a single mobile phone out. They were all well dressed. There was a black tie event in the countryside. I was very impressed, because being hired to entertain at a 21-year-old's birthday, I have the perception that perhaps they'll be a little bit drunk. But these young people were so immaculate and classy and everything. And there was one guy there who said to me, "Oh, can you do that? Can you do that trick where I separate the cards into the red and the black piles?" And he said that one of his friends showed him that at the pub years ago, and he said that's the best card trick he's ever seen in his entire life. So clearly there's evidence in what you're saying to these kinds of effects.
Well, that almost got me into this never-ending hobby of money draining effects I keep buying and putting into. I've got massive drawers, but I watched that with my family years ago on the Daniel Show. It's a classic now, and I was in Davenport when I just started, literally not being a spectator, but this was about 40 years ago, and I was in Davenport. So I think I bought dynamic coins that everybody bought, and something else. And I got a tap on the shoulder, said, "If you've got £1 to spare, buy the manuscript for Out of This World," which I duly did. And then this person said, "I'll show you how to do it." And then when he started to explain it, and then he said he was one of Paul Daniels' magical advisors, I said, "This is the one trick I wanted to know the method my whole life." And it was, literally, that was the door I went into magic. Wow. And explaining the one trick. The whole family we talked about this, and I think like you mentioned at this wedding, because it's so impossible and it's so easy. That's the irony. I mean, it's not so easy, but compared with some of the stuff, and I don't know how you can top that trick, because there are many versions of it, and the original one I think is a bit long these days, and we won't go into different methods of doing it, but it always lives in everybody's memory because it's so impossible, and that was a perfect example how certain effects just do
they stand the test of time.
I know, and also that time I was just starting in it, and of course everyone knew about a particular gimmick you wear on one of your fingers, and I was in Harrods, and John Allen actually was there, and he did the money switch. I couldn't believe it. This is again, and I went to this. In fact, it was Graham Reed was the actual one of the, and Tim's still in the Magic Circle. He said, "Oh yes, he used. Of course, he. I had no idea, and I'd already had, because at that point I didn't realize what that gimmick could be used for, apart from the normal everyday thing. But it was, and that was just, absolutely, it's just so impossible. I know you actually do this, and you get to, it just is an amazing, and he did it very well. And he's, don't talk about John Allen, but he worked for Marvin, I think, at Harrods at that time as a demo. And so there are certain effects like classic that really resonate and chime with people, and people never forget a really exceptional trick.
If people can't already tell John is a purveyor of fine magic. John is very knowledgeable about lots of aspects of magic, from props to gimmicks to workings to creators, and has met lots of interesting magicians as well. So I would like to ask, growing up with Canasta and Daniels, and maybe even people like Channing Pollock, I'm not sure if he was slightly before your time.
Well, I knew him from a film, not. I never saw him
Yes.
live. Yeah.
So I wonder now, in comparison to the magic that we have, do you think that you enjoyed it more as a younger man, or as a younger child, or do you enjoy magic now as an older, more distinguished person? Because the way we enjoy things are very different. On one of these other chats with John Steiner, he said it very nicely, where people who are, under 13, 11, 12, 13, they're not quite adults yet, but they're not children anymore either.
Yes.
And any younger than that, and everything's all magic anyway. Toys are magic. So we
Yes.
perceive magic in very different ways as we
Yes.
start to grow up. So I wonder what you think of magic, because this whole line of questioning started with, what do you think about magic now in its
Mm.
current day? And we've spoken a lot about magicians of the past and greats, and how certain magic has stood the test of time. So how do you feel about magic now in comparison to 30 years ago? But has it gotten better? Has it changed? Is
Well,
the experience that you get different now from magicians in the past?
well, I think, of course, magicians in the past, when I was talking about those, I had no idea how they were done, so I looked at it with a virgin's eye, if you like.
Hmm.
Whereas now one becomes very cynical and quite grumpy at bad magic. I mean, I have to say right away that I'm not the greatest magician, but I like doing it, and people know what I do, and that type of stuff. But I love it. But I'm very, very, you know, I see one sees so much bad magic, and even it's so it's so easy to do it badly, because you've still got to
Hmm.
just do it and get through it and quote fool the audience, but you can fool them in a very entertaining way, or just a very mundane, there are so many mundane performers, and as you say, yes, there are loads of shows, proper big shows, but I really like basically watching close up. I don't
Okay.
like stage. I personally have never liked stage magic, and the Copperfield illusion stuff. It's just never turned me on. I just find it, and it takes so long. And
Hmm.
of course, the magician is getting the credit for not really doing very much. And if we're talking about box
Yeah.
magic and stuff like that, and I find it's very flourishy. But I've never liked it. It just takes too long. Having
Hmm.
said that, though, I mean, Daniels did some very good illusions. I mean, his was, I much prefer the ones Daniels did to the ones that Copperfield. I always felt Copperfield, I know he's an icon, but I think his magic was very overproduced in my
Hmm.
view. And it's like also angel stuff. But I think magic now is, it seems to be, I'm glad it is so popular, because David Wegler's, one of the times I talked to him, I knew him not that well, but he said, magic has ups and downs. It's always been, either a bull or a bear market. And at the moment, it seems very, very up. I mean, there are loads of shows in the West End, highly promoted. I find it, I like to go to small things. I mean, I have friends who, just blow me away. Tom White's I've mentioned his name because he's one of my magical heroes, and not known by anybody outside the magic world. He has clients, but he is, very zany, and his
Hmm.
patter he's just so nice. He's a one-off. And obviously I won't go into people who are my magical heroes, but we all have them, and
Yes.
it's just so you're sitting across on a table with someone. I mean, not as just performing like you're having a drink, and all of a sudden you're blown away by something, and that is an amazing it's one of the nicest things when you're just with a few friends, and they just do things to you that literally are so good, and I think that's really my favorite kind of magic today.
Yeah, I've just made a note of that, so I'd like to touch on that a little bit later on. But we've
Yeah.
spoken about how your first experiences of magic, and then how it's changed, and your thoughts on magic right now, and how, as you've gotten older and you've learned more secrets, and you've been exposed to the other side of the curtain, your thoughts on that. But let's move into the future. And as you know, I'm nervous about the future, not enjoying magic on mobile phones and things like this.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know, I have
Yes.
a
Yes.
disdain to that kind of thing,
Yes.
technological
Yes.
magic. So I
Yes.
wonder, what are your thoughts with magic moving forwards from here? So the next 5 years, 10 years, but even
Yes.
20 years. What would you? Let's have this as two answers. So the first one is, what do you think will happen over the coming years to magic? What do you think it will become? And then we can move on after that to, what would you like to happen to magic over the next decade? So we'll start with, what do you think magic is over the next 10 years?
Are you talking from a professional, from a performer's point of view, or from hobbyists and amateurs?
So in terms of, you're on the inside of magic, so as a magician, from a magician's point of view, where do you see magic going? Do you see more magic on television? Do you see more magic on? Will we ever see another, super famous magician? Because we went
Yes.
from, in the UK at least, Paul Daniels, of course, was famous globally, but if you go back
Yes.
even further than that, we have Houdini, who was
Yes.
perhaps the first social
Yes.
media magician.
Yes. Yes.
And then
Yes.
we go through the times, and we go through David Copperfield and Channing Pollock and Tommy Cooper and Paul
Well,
Daniels, and then
Uri Geller.
uh,
I think the two most famous
exactly.
magicians was Houdini and Uri Geller. I mean, I think
Mm,
there's not a person in the world that hasn't heard of Uri Geller. I mean, there are a lot of
exactly.
people who haven't heard of Houdini. Magicians, of course, would know him, but the man in the street, almost anyone 20 or would know, or no, maybe 25, they'd all heard of Uri Geller. They will not have
Yes.
heard of Houdini. He's sort of faded into the past. Um,
And do
I
you
was,
think we will have another one of these? Because 2001
uh,
brought us David Blaine, and then in the UK we had
yes,
Dynamo. And will
yes,
we see
yes.
another one?
Well, how it'll be probably much more in the Dynamo Blaine vein, because
Mm,
pardon for the rhyming. I think it's going to be. There's always somebody hits the zeitgeist. I don't think they'll last as long as some of these people have, like Blaine. I think because
mm,
the attention, they'll get people doing shows. If it's just someone will come up with something that no one has done, that we can't envisage what it could be, or a completely different take. Because I think there's always going to be a market there for a super magician.
mm,
When I mean a super magician, I mean someone that does stand out from the average magician, because there are a lot of very good magicians all earning quite nice money, either on stage or doing weddings. But that's more like repertory theatre. You want to get a real star. I'm sure there will be. I think there's going to be much more electronic magic,
mm,
i.e., sort of mind reading stroke magic, because as we both know, there are what you can get now and it's just it's frighteningly clever. I mean,
mm,
it's extraordinary, and I think a lot of the young guys are actually buying this stuff, and they are blowing people away at
mm.
weddings. There are some very talented guys in the magic circle, and who spends. There's one particular one, I don't mention his name, but he spends a lot of money and performs very, very well with all this stuff. And he's also very good with the technical stuff. He's very, very
Mm.
good sleight of hand, and he's very all round. It all comes down in the end, I think, to the personality of the performer. And Blaine made magic look cool. It was never cool. It was a
Yeah.
different thing. When you think of a magician coming out with white tie and tails, I mean, it's laughable today, and it really is.
Mhm.
I mean, there are people. I mean, one of the presidents, very elegant guy, very good with. He doesn't do it anymore. I just his name, Scott Penrose. I mean, there was a guy,
Mhm.
real old school, wonderful performer, but I don't think he does dove magic because it's not politically correct anymore. Although personally, I never liked
Yeah.
it because I never did feel happy for the birds. But he's the last guy who really did well with white tie and tails, and he really did look the part.
Mhm.
But otherwise, it just looks so anachronistic. We don't dress now. The only time we dress is when we go to funerals, weddings, or you're a performer, you dress up. And even though you
Mhm.
don't have to be that well dressed, it depends what you're doing. And as I mentioned, I'm a member of the Salvo Club, and I put on 6 shows. I do a little bit, like 10 minutes. I'm the warm up act, and then I have a good professional, all people I know, and that goes
Mhm.
down like, it's wonderment. I mean, it's the most successful thing they do in the club. Before I joined, they never had even thought of having a magic show, and it's just become part of the fabric of the club now. Once a year or every sort of whenever I feel like getting somebody, and it's just is very, very good.
Is that
When you see,
something that you would, sorry to cut you off, is that something that you
yes.
would like to see more of, because we were talking about how I asked you about how you feel Magic is going, but in terms of what you would like to see with Magic over the next 5 years, 10 years, would you like to see more of this? People taking up the initiative to, if they're part of a members club like the Savile
Yes,
Club, or if they're
yes,
part of a community
yes,
group, or their
yes,
local town hall
yes,
or
yes,
council group, for them
yes,
to just say, hey,
yes.
I think we
Yeah,
should organize a magic show.
yeah, absolutely. I
Actually,
mean,
saying that, sorry, before you go
yes,
on, I was in Hull a month or so ago, and Hull Magic Society put on a completely free show. It was for a long time. It was for about 8 hours, and they had
yes.
magicians coming on and in a public performance space,
Oh,
and
fantastic.
it was all to generate a
Yes,
little bit of buzz about magic and
yes,
to recruit some new members, maybe to
yes,
suggest to people, hey, if you enjoy magic, we exist,
yes,
we're a club,
yes,
and we
yes,
support magicians. It was
yes,
so good. I went there and I
yes,
watched a bunch of the magicians,
yes,
and I
yes,
loved it. And there was
yes.
there was no entry fee, there was no barrier to entry. There was
That's
just people
perfect.
sat there for hours
Yes,
enjoying it.
I know
So
exactly. I mean, when
would you
I
like to see more of that?
definitely. I mean, the club I'm talking about, it was. I don't want to go on too long, but it started
Mm,
by by musicians and writers, and it's a serious place. And when I suggested, would you like? I think I'd like to put on a magic show, and they said, well, we've never done it, and they're very open to ideas, and it was a standing room only thing because I pitched it that people only see magic on TV basically. This is we're going
yes.
back about 12, 15 years ago. It's a little bit less, but they never see live magic. They might pay and go to see a show in the West End. That's again a
Mm,
different experience because it's not intimate. And it turned out this was the most successful thing the club had ever had. And I went to another club the other, all the clubs would like the Garrick, which everybody would know is famous for actors. I mean, a beautiful
mm,
club, bit stuffy. They, if I was a member there, I would suggest it there because no clubs think about it because they don't even, unless there's somebody who's passionate for doing it, they wouldn't even, because I am a member of the Magic Circle and I knew I knew exactly, they were all people I love watching
yes.
and they all went down very, very well. And I mean, it was a bit risky, you never know, but I mean, so yes, I mean, the more people see magic in intimacy, I mean, I think the problem with wedding is they're drinking a lot, and
Mm,
they, of course they're going to watch it, but they're not watching it in a really concentrated way. There's all tables all over the place. I don't have to tell you do it, but if you
mm.
do it in clubs, you've got a captive audience, and they're all sitting there, and they literally get spellbound. I mean, the reactions were embarrassingly positive. I don't want to say embarrassing, but it was just beyond my expectations. And
So if any,
and
for whoever's watching this, one of John's tips for you from this chat is to perhaps go out and whatever club is near you, whatever community is near you,
yes,
go and organize, ask them, just say to them,
yes,
because maybe
yes,
they, just like John and the Savile, maybe no one's ever said to them before, hey, we should organize a magic show.
yes.
So go out,
But
try it, see what happens.
you have to have very good magicians. There's
Yes.
nothing. This is the. I mean, I knew what I was bringing there. I mean, I didn't know whether they would like the magic. I'm not trying to just self-aggrandize myself, but I do know a good magician when I see one, and that's the thing. But if you've got a good magician or couple, it is people talk about it and they love it and they relax. Magic is special. The name itself, they use it
I love that.
so many things. They say things are magic. It's a magical experience. It's a magical night. It was a magical wedding. It's a wonderful adjective anyway.
Mhm. I
And
couldn't agree more. There is something very unique that
yes,
magic, and I think that's why magic has stood the test of time, right? There are many
yes,
things throughout the years that have been
yes,
passing fads or that
yes,
are cyclical with fashion or pop
yes,
culture or whatever it
yes,
may be. But magic
yeah,
is one of those things that has
yes,
always been present for, well, if we're going to speculate, it's in contest, isn't
wonderfully.
it, for being the
Yes,
oldest profession
yes,
known to
yes.
society. So
There is another
it's
one.
stood the,
A
there
bit
there
of
is, which is certainly
yes,
another podcast
yes,
to,
yes, yes,
I'm sure
indeed.
there are plenty of podcasts who would love to
Yes,
discuss that.
yes, yes, indeed, indeed. But no,
So
it is exceptional. It's exceptional if you like it. I mean, I do. It's a bit like Marmite or garlic. If you don't like magic, it's
but do
really.
you think that people don't like magic, or do you think that people have just had a bad experience, or they have a preconception of what magic is? Do you honestly? Because I don't think that anyone dislikes magic. They just, it's like wine. People might
Yes,
try 10 wines and say, I don't
Yes,
like wine. You
yes.
just haven't tried one that you enjoy
I
yet. There are
wouldn't
softer
argue
ones
against
and
it.
there are
I
harsher
know.
ones. And there,
Yeah, yeah. No, I wouldn't argue. My daughter is absolutely doesn't like it at all.
hmm,
Doesn't like magic. But I've done one or two things. She had friends who like magic, and she thought that was good. Yes, that was. So your argument is well placed. Yes, I agree with that. But she's particularly difficult. But no, because people do see bad magic. If you saw someone like Williams came into your room, no one could dislike him. Once he's caught
yes.
your even the most anti-magic, he would wow you because he. Otherwise, I mean, I'm just giving him as an example. But as as you quite rightly said, it's bad magic that has made people not like it, and there's more
Yeah.
bad than good.
I think that this is a brilliant point. My next question for you is if moving forward from this point onwards
Yes.
with all of the experience that you've gathered thus far, is there one thing that you would like to see change with magic moving forward in the magic community, with products, with how people perform magic to people? Are there any things that you would specifically in mind that you think, yes, I think that could be improved, or I think the magician should think a little bit more about this thing? Are there any things that you would change that you could recommend to people, that if there's anyone watching this, whether they are younger magicians, whether they are older established magicians, something that will give them food for thought, where
This
they
is a
can
very
walk
this,
away from this and say, okay, I'll have a think about that. I'll change how I do this.
well. I think that's the hardest question you asked. How you can. What I think is very negative about the magic society, the magic world, really, is this. Of course, it has to be secretive. Obviously, you can't tell how the trick is, but it's a very negative thing. Secrecy. It's a horrible. I've got a secret.
Mhm.
Whereas if they could redefine how that is perceived, I mean, I'm getting a bit stumbled here because it's quite hard to put it into words. But there's a certain thing about magicians. They look at laymen in a way, kind of in a very condescending way,
Mhm.
and laymen they see a lot. They just don't bother to comment. I mean, they not necessarily know
Yeah.
how it's done, but it's the thing is, if something suspicious, they don't have to know how it's done. But it's like, you were talking about your dislike for phone tricks, which I agree with you. The moment you used a phone, they don't know how it's done, but they know the phone did it. That's the problem. If you
Mhm.
take a pack of cards, they know you're going to do a card trick, and they know there's a method, but they're not going to say, "Oh, it has to be a method," but that's the prop that you're going to use. But this is the trouble with phones or anything electronic like that. If they know it's electronic, but I think the whole thing is how you make magic friendlier for people in a way.
I understand what you mean, because secrecy is keeping people out. The
Yes,
idea of keeping a
exactly,
secret is
exactly.
pushing
Yes,
people away from
yes,
you rather than
yes,
bringing
yes,
people towards you.
yes. And I think, I mean, I went to see a show recently. I think it was Daniel something Baker at at,
Mhm.
um, at the Crazy Cox in Piccadilly. I highly recommend anyone see him. Now he was a mind reader, but very accomplished, very good. And afterwards, he left the stage, went in outside, and everybody, all the audience came up to me, talked to them, he flattered them, and took photographs with them, and really, like, that wasn't an after show party, but it was an after show conversation with him, and he was really very good, very warm, very genuine. And I you know, I was told about by another magician. He's very, very worthwhile seeing,
Mhm.
and that's how magic is nice. He was just an excellent performer, and that, it's such a pleasure to see that. And that's how magic should be, because very often I think magicians sort of have a sort of attitude. I'm a magician. I've done my act, and I've entertained you, but you're not, not at my level, really. And this is what I find:
Mhm.
is the lack of modesty, and this again, this kind of, I know it, you don't, so I'm cleverer than you. I mean, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm oversimplifying it, but I think you know what I'm getting at. And
Absolutely. It's that idea of, if you're entertaining a group of people, whether
yes,
that be your friends and family, right now we're
yes,
just going into
yes,
the holiday season, Christmas
yes,
time,
yes,
festive period. So
yes,
people will have lots of family visiting, friends
yes,
visiting, go out for drinks. Or
yes,
or if it's in a professional environment where you're entertaining at an event, whether it be a wedding or a corporate event,
yes.
something like that. If someone says to a magician, "Oh, I saw that. All right, know how that's done." Bring them in,
Yes,
rather than
that's
close that
right.
door of secrecy and say, "No,
Exactly.
you don't. No,
That's
I
right.
know this,"
That's
and
right.
be combative.
Exactly.
It's much
Exactly.
better to be to have a
Absolutely.
response of, Yeah, me too. I know the
Yes,
secret
yes,
too. It's good, isn't
that's
it?
right.
We keep
Absolutely,
it secret
absolutely.
because
Yes,
every good
that's right.
magician keeps the secret.
Exactly. Not get haughty and very arrogant
Yes.
and
So
sniffing, which
I
they,
love that.
yes,
That for
yes,
anyone who's watching,
yes.
another top tip would be to try to be warm to people
That's
when
right.
you're
That's the
performing.
most.
Don't
That's
worry
right.
too much. Don't get
Yes,
combative with them. Don't
yes,
argue with them.
yes, yes.
I won't mention the magician's name, but I've been told of a story of a particular magician in the UK where at weddings, and I don't know for how long this went on, and I don't know if he's still a working magician, but when people were a little bit combative with him and were teasing him at weddings,
Yes.
he would reach under a woman's dress and produce a big plastic prawn, and he would say, "I knew I smelt something fishy."
Oh, you're
And this was
joking.
his way of no,
Oh,
completely true. And of course, there
oh,
were several weddings that he was ejected from, and I think he got
yes.
punched a couple of times as well.
God,
And I think
can't
this is
believe
the
it.
exact kind of thing that you're
Yes,
talking about. Instead of
yes,
trying to fight
yes,
people, bring them onto your side, befriend them,
yes,
acknowledge what they're saying, because
yes,
this is the thing as well, isn't it? And it's not just with magic, it's not unique to magic, it's with anything in life. As soon as you start to hide something from someone,
yes.
they want to see it more.
That's right.
We see this in children, even children who have not developed many habits
Yes,
yet. If you take something, a
yes.
little bell or something, and then you hide it, they just want to
Yes,
grab. They want it.
yes,
They want the
yes,
bell.
yes, yes,
So
yes,
let people in. Try to be warm to people. Try
yes,
to be personable to people.
yes.
I think that is certainly a top tip. Be someone who
That's right.
people
Just
will
in,
like.
yes, yes, embrace
Mm.
them, talk. And people, when you say, "Oh, well, you're made of the magic circle," or you're a magician, or you're a hobbyist, the questions they ask you about magic, it goes for hours,
Mm.
and people love to, they're not asking how secrets are, or do you know how that's done? Yes, I do know how that's done. There's a gap. And
Hmm.
well, they know I'm not going to tell them. It's like I can't, because it's their profession. I said, I just use this example. I started off with a joke. I said, no one. If you hear a joke and you know what the joke is, you're not going to give the punchline. You're not going to ruin
Yeah,
it for. I mean, it's the same thing with someone with
exactly.
a trick. And that's how my analogy is with. That's how it is. But
Mm.
and if people do know, I mean, you do get, I mean, I'm sure you find it because you're a pro, but you do get some people, it's a competition between the magician,
Yeah.
and they get very, they can get quite aggressive because
Mm.
they're taking like
I've
an
seen it
intellectual
happen. They get
exercise.
defensive. Mm.
Yes. No, I was doing something for, I think I mentioned to you privately, but this was a competition. And I said, just take any 10 cards out of 12, whatever it was. About 10 minutes later, he was so selecting every card like there was something different with. And I said to him, look, like finish today or something. But
Hmm.
it was the hardest thing. It was just like pulling teeth. I said to him, I think I'm going to go to the dentist, have my tooth pulled. It'll be more pleasurable than doing magic. He's a friend. I wasn't doing it arrogantly, but
Mm.
but he was just it was a competition.
Yeah.
I should underline this. This guy is an incredibly wealthy guy, so maybe he has to be top in everything. But it was, you have this thing, and you just handle it, and you joke it away. But you
Well,
know,
this goes back to one of the things that we were talking about earlier, isn't it? That there's something really special about magic, and it's a communication of something. It's a
yes,
journey that you take with your audience. So
that's
I
right.
think that when people find themselves with people like this, who for someone like him, who is very successful, very
Yes,
wealthy, as you say, perhaps everything is all about being number one. I
it's
have to be the
control,
best.
control, control.
Exactly. So try to think about when you're performing for
Yes,
people like this, try to think about, okay, how can I change this? How can I change the narrative? It's not me against
yes,
you,
that's right.
it's us together.
Yes,
You're with
yes,
me, I'm with you.
that's right.
And I think that is a really nice. So I have two more questions for you.
Yeah,
And I think that is a really nice introduction to this one. When you're performing magic for people, as you said, that you don't profess to be an incredible magician, you're a hobbyist, you love magic. So, from your perspective, when you're performing magic for people, what is it that you're trying to? What's your message that you're trying to do? How do you select your magic? What is it in a magic trick that has what elements are you looking for?
yes. This is tricky. It's usually something that's fooled me that I think will
Mm.
fool. I mean, well, I'm quite easily fooled. Most magicians are, but. No, if I see a nice effect or it's I like things to be basically normal objects. I mean, there's some
Mm,
magicians, some people love to have things that are different. They are magical, but I like props that look normal things.
mhm.
So obviously cards is
Organic,
an
as we say.
organic. I know, I hate that term. Yes, organic. Yes, that well-known cliche in magic. But yes, no, I like things that look, the everyday object that has a nice story about it, and you just talk to them in a encompassing way. So it becomes an intimate experience. I'm trying to think what I would do. Maybe
Do you
I
like
might well.
things that happen in their hands? Do you prefer
Yes, I
the
like the thing.
confidence
I
of
mean,
having things in your hands?
we talked about electronic things. I have got some things from a certain, I don't know if we can mention names here, but
Yeah, of
it
course, if you
isn't.
want to.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, sort of Pro Mystic do amazing things. I've had very good value with their stuff, whether it be a die or one of their boxes, and that's fine. You can do card mind reading with that, and that's it's just a square thing, so you know what it is. Or some stuff with ESP cards, but on a light, a light touch.
Mm.
Um, I mean, one always does a couple of card tricks, but as far as I'm concerned, it's just two card tricks,
Yeah.
never more.
Well,
I think.
this is the thing, isn't it? That there are,
Yeah.
what is it? There's
Yes.
three types of people in the world. There are visual people. There are I think it's in reference to how people learn. There are visual learners. There are auditory learners, and then there are kinesthetic learners who learn by
Yes.
doing something, physically
Yes.
doing something.
Yes.
And
Yes.
this is why some people are great at mechanics and engineering in
Yes.
comparison to painting or
That's right. Of course. Of course.
music or things
Of
like this.
course.
So, with those three things in mind, what would be your list? Would it be visual, kinesthetic, and then
Ah, that's
audio?
good.
Or
No, visual. I think
that would be
visual.
the top
Yes.
priority, something
Yes.
that
Yes.
is a feast for the eyes.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. Exactly. Nothing. I don't do anything that amazing, but what I've seen, with friends, they seem to like it, and whenever I do anything public, which the aforementioned club, it's gone down fine. Luckily, nothing's ever gone wrong so far. But the trouble with when you're performing to 100 people, if you're a professional, you're doing it all the time. You've got get outs, you've got put
Mm.
downs, whereas you're doing it once or twice a year. It's very hard, and I can't practice my magic. I can practice myself, but you need a third party to practice your
Yes.
magic on, and that's the problem I find. So a lot of my stuff is kind of more theoretical, but
Hmm.
and getting the right moment to to do something at my club, because you don't want to.
This is very important too.
Yeah, and you
Choosing the
don't
moment that
yeah,
you
very hard,
perform.
and you don't want to be a magical bore,
Hmm. Yep.
and which you can
I forget.
you
I think it was. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there was a very famous magician who once told me, "There's nothing worse than a magician who overstays his welcome."
yes, absolutely. You should always leave them not satiated. They should
Hmm.
want more. Don't give me, you walk away. But I only, whenever I'm only going to do 5-10 minutes, not even, three,
Yeah.
maybe two card tricks and something else, and that's it. And if they want more, they're not going to get it. I mean, not, you want to, as you say, you want to keep them hungry. They
And
should
this
just
also
always.
encourages them to invite you out to lunch again.
Yes, yes. No, but that's the point. Not too much, unless they're really, I mean, certain people can't see enough, and
Mm.
you try to fill that void. But it's a difficult path. How you don't want to say, do you want to see a card trick?
Mm.
Those are terrible expressions. I have my, we've spoken privately about the worst thing is, do me a favor,
Yes.
pick a card trick. Why do you need to do me a favor? This is completely irrelevant, tautological, and you don't need that.
Mhm.
I know it's probably a nervous thing, but it just sounds, do me a favor. You're
I think a
performing a
lot of
trick.
people should think more, maybe not more deeply, but I mean, this was the whole point of me having this series of videos to get
Yes,
people to think a little bit more philosophically, rather than just
yes,
buying a magic trick,
yes,
learning it, regurgitating what the tutorial teaches
yes,
them. Think a
yes.
little bit more about what you're doing, why you're doing it, because I watched a video, a short video, a 60-second performance on Instagram last night, and I won't say who it was, but the person said, okay, pick a card now, sign the card. Okay, now I'm going to put the card back in the pack. okay, now I'm going to do this, and
Yes,
now I'm going
yes,
to fold the handkerchief up, and now I'm going to put the
yes.
folded card in the
Performing
handkerchief.
for the blind.
Yes, exactly. And that is not entertaining for
Yes,
anyone.
no, no, no,
So
no, exactly.
I think that is certainly another Mason tip for
Well,
anyone
not talking
watching this.
never. It's very hard not talking cliches. The magical cliches. You've seen. It's always do me a favor, not just once but a few times. Do me a favor,
Mhm.
take a card. Do me a favor, sign it on the face. Just sign it on the face. Pick a card. Why? As few words as possible. Always in any form of life, not just magic. Don't
Less is more,
expand.
right?
Yes. Brevity is the soul of wit. The
Hmm.
less you say, people get it. They're not stupid. They know you've got a pack of cards. And if you're shuffling, they know you're
Yes.
shuffling, and you offer it to them. You don't have to do me a favor and take a card. But they
Mhm.
do talk. It's like a comfort blanket.
Yeah, it's definitely habitual with some,
Yes,
and I think
yes,
even professional magicians I've seen this with, they go
yes,
into this
yes,
autopilot where they're saying
yes,
these kinds of things, and
yes,
I think
yes.
that certainly having a little bit more thought in these kinds of practices. Oh wow.
That's a fire alarm that will stop in about 15 seconds. It's
Yes.
gone.
It's the perfect
Yes.
misdirection to get me
Perfect.
into the
Exactly.
final question.
Right.
And this brings us back. I said to you earlier that I made a note of something, and I
Yes.
think that talking about how you try to perform to people and what you would choose in your elements for a magic trick, and then what we've discussed with that over the past 5 or 10 minutes, I want to talk a little bit about friends in magic, because you've mentioned this a few times. You've mentioned that you have great friends in magic, and we've been friends for, I would say, a couple of years now.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I think that, and I've messaged this to you before, that your friendship has been so valuable to me, and your support and your encouragement, especially in times that were
It's very
difficult.
touching. Yes.
So
I
I
really.
think that,
That's very so kind to say that.
well, it's true, and I think that
Okay.
we should tell people when they are
Yes.
appreciated in things. And I think that
Yes.
magic certainly has a special community, not always the
Yes.
healthiest community, but
No.
the
Absolutely.
people I know in magic are some of the most amazing people I've ever met in my
Yes.
entire life. So
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit about that as well. How do you think that being friends with a magician, because for anyone who isn't aware, you took up magic, or the real bug of magic bit you in your 30s, is that right, or
Yes. Late
40s? Or,
30s. Yeah. Late
yes.
30s.
So you came into magic a lot later than most people do.
Yes.
So I want to ask, how has being in the magic community and making friends with magicians uh, enriched your life, or what has it added to you? What's
Yes.
special about being magic and having friends in magic?
Yes. Well, you're never bored if you're never bored. You can always find something to read about magic or something to look up about magic. When you meet another magician, before you know he could be a friend. This is sort of
Mm,
it's like a golden thread. You don't have to say anything. You know that you'll be able to communicate very quickly with him. You'll soon find out what his interests are, what he likes to do, and you quickly find out whether it's a magician you want to be a friend with or not.
mhm,
You get some very nerdy magicians, um, the one the ultra secretive ones that are no fun. But when you do click, I've got about I don't know, I guess 5, 6, maybe 10 really close magician friends, 5 ultra close magician friends,
mm,
and it's just meeting, chatting, seeing what's going on, and just talking, not necessarily doing anything particular, but the friends that are very close and that they're very very good magicians. I mean, so much. I mean, it's so much more. I mean, they've been doing it since they were 12 and 13, and they're so capable, and it's just fun being with them because I love being entertained by them. I hate showing them anything because you feel so inadequate. But they're also, they don't care, because they're friends, and you know 2 or 3 of them already, and they
mhm,
are very special. They are really, and they're fantastic thinkers. These guys invent. I mean, you talk about the stuff on the market. One of them in particular, I work with, is Tom Whitestone. He's one of my magical heroes. They're trying to make him write a book because he's
mm,
invented so much stuff and he's not interested in it at all. He just loves to do it. He'll tell a few friends his methods, and hopefully, he should leave this legacy, because whether people will bother to do it, I don't know. I mean, he's very old school, and but he's exceptionally, he's an exceptional magician, and there's not a magician who doesn't come under his spell. Literally, people used to come down, they're sort of FISM winners, and they'd be in London, or they come down from Blackpool, and Tom will be there, and he'd literally blow them away. We used to call him, he's like, all of a sudden there's a bullet between, they don't know what's hit them. And he just sits there quite modestly. And these guys are amazing. He can still literally kill. But so modestly, there's never a smirk. And he works all the time. He's always practicing. So it's what he can sit down. I don't see him as enough now, because he lives in Kent. But we'll spend a couple of hours, and how he remembers all that, you cannot believe. He'll go through about 20, 25 things. He's got something in this pocket, he's got a bag, he just has a couple of bags. He could do a 48-hour act. He's got so much stuff with it, only as a joke, and he never bores you. He's one of you cannot be bored by him. Other magicians will start to wane after a while, but never with him. He's just, he's extraordinary. I don't think you've met him yet, but you will be. He enchants you. He's enchanting.
This, I think, is again something that's very unique to the world of magic, and I like the fact that you use the phrase being friends with magicians is like there's always a golden thread there.
Yes.
Whatever else there is around it, however many other twines or threads there are making up the rope or whatever it is, there's always that golden thread that runs through it.
Yes. And the magician will, they will be good. Most of them will, they'll be good guys. They will. I'm using the masculine term, but I don't. I mean, there are loads of very talented lady magicians, but I just don't. I don't sort of, not particularly, but I've never really got close friendships. There is one who's very nice in the Magic Circle. She's Indian. She's a very sweet person, but I don't go to the Magic Circle. I hardly ever go there. I just find it. For whatever reason, physically it's too far away. I can't be bothered. But there, there are a lot of nice people there.
I love that. In terms of friendship, and we've spoken about how magic has unique properties. I think that on that golden thread, we'll wrap up this conversation. So I hope that you've all found this enjoyable and insightful, and I also hope that John's tips. I think we had 3 really good tips that you can take away and you can take action on right now to try to improve your magic, to improve your performance.
As long as I have been pontificating, because that's always a bit of and as long as it has been some informative, because one doesn't want to get all terribly boring and highfalutin.
Well, we will find out with the comments.
Yes. Yes, we certainly will.
So if you enjoyed this conversation, engage with exactly, hit the like button and leave us a message, and perhaps we'll reply to it and explain further if you have any questions. But John, thank you so much for joining me today, and thank you for taking your precious time to share some pearls of wisdom.
Thank you so much, Scott. I enjoyed it very much. You're a very good interviewer.
Thank you.
Bye for now. Bye for now.
Bye.